The lease agreement sat on the dining room table between us, crisp and official looking. My father had even used premium paper stock, the kind with a slight texture that suggested legitimacy. I recognized it immediately. The same paper his law firm used for important contracts. "Emily, sweetheart, you understand this is just standard procedure," Mom said, her voice dripping with the false sweetness she reserved for uncomfortable conversations. "Your father and I have discussed this extensively, and we feel it's only fair that you contribute to the household expenses." I kept my expression neutral, my hands folded in my lap. Through the window behind them, I could see the oak tree I'd climbed as a child, its branches stretching toward the second-floor bedroom that used to be mine. The house looked exactly as it had for 30 years, white colonial with black shutters, perfectly manicured lawn, the kind of home that appeared in neighborhood association newsletters. "We've been more than generous," Dad added, adjusting his reading glasses. "Letting you stay here rent-free for the past 3 months, while you got back on your feet. But at 29 years old, Emily, it's time to take responsibility." My brother Marcus leaned against the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, a smug smile playing at his lips. He'd driven over specifically for this conversation, leaving his downtown law office early. His suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "I think $3,000 is actually quite reasonable," Marcus interjected. "Have you seen what studios are going for in this neighborhood? You're getting the entire third floor, private bathroom, parking space. Mom and Dad are practically giving you a deal." I didn't respond. Instead, I glanced at my watch. 3:47 p.m. David should be arriving any moment now. "Are you even listening?" Mom's voice sharpened. "Your father took time off work to draft this agreement. The least you could do is show some appreciation." "I'm listening," I said quietly. "Then sign it." Dad slid the document closer, producing a Mont Blanc pen from his breast pocket. "First and last month's rent due today. That's $6,000. I assume you can manage that with whatever you've been earning from that little online business of yours." That little online business. The phrase hung in the air like an insult wrapped in condescension. They'd been using variations of it for 4 years now, ever since I'd quit my job at Marcus's firm to start my own company. Emily's playing entrepreneur was another favorite. That hobby she wastes time on. Rounded out their top 3. "Actually," I began, but a car door slammed outside. Through the window, I watched David Richardson step out of his Tesla, straightening his tie. He carried a leather portfolio under one arm, and moved with the confident efficiency of someone who managed million-dollar properties for a living. He'd been my property manager for 2 years now, handling the day-to-day operations of my real estate portfolio, while I focused on expanding my software company. The doorbell rang. "Who on earth is that?" Mom frowned, glancing toward the foyer. "Emily, are you expecting someone?" "My 3:50 appointment," I said, standing. "I'll get it." "Emily Louise Torres, we are in the middle of a very important discussion," Dad said sharply. "Whatever delivery you ordered can wait." I walked to the front door anyway. Behind me, I heard Marcus mutter something about my rudeness. My mother's exasperated sigh. David stood on the porch, professional smile in place. "Miss Torres, good afternoon. I apologize for the short notice, but we need to discuss the situation with your tenants." "Perfect timing, actually," I said, gesturing him inside. "They're right here." His eyebrows rose slightly, the only indication of surprise he allowed himself, before he followed me into the dining room. My parents and Marcus stared at the stranger now standing in their dining room. David set his portfolio on the table, directly on top of the unsigned lease agreement. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Dad demanded, his attorney voice emerging. "This is a private family matter." "David Richardson, Richardson Property Management." He extended his hand, which my father ignored. "I manage Miss Torres's real estate portfolio, including this property." The silence that followed was exquisite. "I'm sorry. What?" Mom's voice came out as barely a whisper. "This property," David repeated, opening his portfolio and removing a stack of documents. "The residence located at 847 Maple Ridge Drive. Miss Torres has owned it for approximately 18 months. Marcus pushed off from the doorway. "That's impossible. This house belongs to our parents. It's been in the family for 30 years. Actually, it belonged to First National Bank, as of March 2024, David said calmly, laying out the first document, a foreclosure notice. "Your parents defaulted on the mortgage, After your father's firm experienced significant financial difficulties, the property entered foreclosure proceedings in April 2024. Dad's face had gone pale. How did you? Those records are sealed. Public records, sir, David replied. The foreclosure sale was scheduled for June 15, 2024. However, the property was purchased before auction by Torres Holdings LLC for $847,000, roughly $100,000 above market value, to ensure the sale went through quickly. He laid out another document, the deed of sale. My name was printed clearly at the top, along with the date June 10, 2024. That's Emily. What is this? Mom's voice trembled. What is he talking about? I remained standing, my arms crossed. Exactly what it sounds like. You were going to lose the house. I bought it. You? Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow. You don't have that kind of money. You're barely scraping by with your little website thing. My little website thing, I said softly, is a SaaS platform that provides inventory management solutions for mid-sized retailers. Last year we processed $47 million in transactions. We have 3,200 active clients across North America. The number hung in the air. I watched it land, watched them try to process it, watched their assumptions crumble in real time. That's impossible, Dad said. You said you were struggling. You said. I never said I was struggling, I interrupted. You assumed. There's a difference. David continued, his voice professionally neutral. Miss Torres purchased this property through her holding company to prevent it from being sold to a third party. She then allowed you to continue living here under an informal arrangement while she traveled for business. However, that arrangement was never meant to be permanent. Wait, Mom stood up, gripping the edge of the table. You're saying Emily owns our house, our home? Technically, she owns the property, David corrected. You've been residing here as guests. However, 3 months ago, Miss Torres requested that I draft a formal lease agreement, as she felt it was time to regularize the arrangement. He pulled out another document, a professional lease agreement, properly formatted, with standard clauses and protections, nothing like the hasty document my father had printed. This is the lease Miss Torres authorized me to prepare, David said. Market rate for a property of this size in this neighborhood is approximately $4,500 per month. However, Miss Torres instructed me to offer you a family discount, $2,000 monthly, with the first 2 months free to allow you time to adjust. Marcus grabbed the document, scanning it rapidly. His legal training kicked in, and I watched his expression change as he verified the authenticity, the signatures, the notarization, the proper legal language. I sent this lease to your email 6 weeks ago, Mr. Torres, David said to my father, and to you, Mrs. Torres. I followed up twice, 3 weeks ago, and again last week. I received no response. Dad's jaw worked soundlessly. Mom had sat back down, her hand over her mouth. Since I received no response, and the 2-month grace period is ending, I'm here to discuss next steps, David continued. Miss Torres has been extraordinarily patient and generous. However, she does need a decision. Either you'll sign the lease agreement and begin paying rent, or we'll need to discuss alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements, Marcus repeated flatly. You mean eviction? I prefer to think of it as helping you find accommodations that better suit your current financial situation, David said diplomatically. Miss Torres has indicated she's willing to provide references and even offer a security deposit loan if needed to help you secure a new residence. I finally spoke. I never wanted to do this publicly. I sent you that lease 6 weeks ago because I wanted to handle this quietly, with dignity. I gave you 2 months rent-free to adjust to the new reality. Instead, I continued, my voice steady, you decided to draft your own lease, charging me $3,000 monthly to live in a house I own. Did you even notice the emails from David? Or did you just assume they were spam, because you couldn't conceive of me being in a position to own anything? The silence stretched. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson from next door watering her roses, completely unaware of the earthquake happening in our dining room. Emily, honey, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. Mom started, her voice taking on a pleading quality I'd never heard before. We didn't know. You never told us. I tried to tell you. I said, 3 years ago, when my company first became profitable, I invited you to dinner to share the news. Do you remember what you said, Dad? His face remained blank. You said, call us when you have real news, not fantasy projections. The memory still stung, even now. 2 years ago, when we landed our first Fortune 500 client, I came over with champagne. You told me not to get ahead of myself, that one client doesn't make a business. Last year, when Forbes featured my company in their 30 under 30 list, I sent you the article. You never mentioned it, not once. Marcus was still holding the lease, his knuckles white. The 30 under 30 list. I read that issue. There was no one named Torres. He stopped, his face changing. Wait, E.L. Torres, CEO of Streamline Solutions. That was you? That was me. But that company is valued at. He couldn't finish the sentence. $89 million. As of our last funding round, I supplied. We're projecting $120 million by end of year. Mom made a small sound, almost a whimper. Dad just stared at the table. David cleared his throat gently. Miss Torres, I should mention that we also need to discuss the outstanding utilities situation. I nodded, and he continued. The electricity, water, gas and internet services have been in Miss Torres's name since the property purchase. She's been covering all utility costs for the past 18 months. The total comes to approximately $31,000. $31,000. Dad repeated numbly. Additionally, property taxes of $23,000 annually, homeowners insurance at $4,200 annually, and maintenance costs. David consulted his portfolio. New roof last fall, $18,000. HVAC repairs, $3,400. Landscaping service, $400 monthly. Miss Torres has covered all these expenses without requesting reimbursement. He looked up. In total, Miss Torres has invested approximately $982,000 into this property and its maintenance since purchase. That's the original $847,000 purchase price plus $135,000 in taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance. The numbers seemed to physically press down on my parents. Mom's shoulders curved inward. Dad's commanding presence had evaporated, leaving behind a man who suddenly looked his 63 years. Why? Mom whispered. If you had all this money, why did you live so simply? Why did you let us think? Because I wanted to see if you'd love me regardless, I said quietly. I wanted to know if your approval was conditional on my success, or if you'd support me, even when you thought I was struggling. And you failed that test, I added, spectacularly. Marcus set down the lease with shaking hands. And look, we didn't understand. If we'd known, if you'd known, you would have treated me differently, I finished. That's exactly the point. You should have treated me with respect regardless of my bank account. You're my family. When you thought I was struggling, you mocked me, called my business a hobby, suggested I was wasting my life. And today, I gestured to the unsigned lease on the table. You tried to charge me rent to live in my own house. The front door opened, and my sister Amanda rushed in, still in her hospital scrubs. Sorry I'm late. The ER was crazy. She stopped, taking in the scene. What's going on? Your sister owns the house, Marcus said flatly. Has for over a year. She's been paying for everything while we thought she was broke. Amanda's bag slipped from her shoulder. What? David, ever professional, pulled out another chair. Dr. Torres, please sit. This concerns you as well. Amanda wasn't part of this intervention, I said quickly. She's been the only one who never made me feel less than. Actually, David said, Miss Torres wanted to speak with you separately. She has a proposal regarding the guest house. Amanda's eyes widened. The guest house was a small cottage at the back of the property, currently used for storage. She'd mentioned once, years ago, that it would be perfect for her when she finished her residency. I had it renovated, I told her. New kitchen, bathroom, everything. It's yours if you want it. No rent, just cover your own utilities. Tears sprang to Amanda's eyes. Emily, I can't. That's too much. You supported my business from day one, I said. You came to my office opening, even though it was just a rented desk in a co-working space. You told your friends about my software. You believed in me. I turned back to my parents and Marcus. This is what family support looks like. Not conditional, not based on success metrics. Just belief. Dad cleared his throat, the sound rough. Emily, We made a terrible mistake. Several terrible mistakes, I corrected. Over several years. Yes. He removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. When he looked up, they were red-rimmed. Your mother and I were facing bankruptcy. We were terrified. And I think we took out our fear on you. Watching you pursue something risky, when we were losing everything, it felt like a judgment on our own failures. It was the most honest thing he'd said to me in years. We were wrong, Mom added, her voice breaking. We should have told you we were struggling. We should have been proud of you for taking risks. We were too afraid to take. Instead, we projected our failures onto you. Marcus stood abruptly, walking to the window. I convinced myself you were foolish for leaving my firm. It was easier than admitting I was jealous that you had the courage to do what I've always been too scared to try. The admissions hung in the air, raw and painful. David began gathering his documents. I'll step outside and give you privacy to discuss. No, I said. Stay. We need to settle this now. I looked at my parents. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign David's lease. The real one, at $2,000 monthly. First month starts in 2 weeks, giving you time to arrange finances. All the back utilities, maintenance, taxes, that's forgiven. Consider it my gift. But from this point forward, we have a proper landlord-tenant relationship with clear boundaries. Emily, we can't accept. Dad started. You don't have a choice, I said firmly. This is me being generous. The alternative is you find a new place to live. And given your current financial situation, that won't be easy. I softened slightly. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because we need a reset. You need to see me as an adult, as a successful businesswoman, not as your child who needs guidance and correction. And maybe, I added quietly, living in a house you now know I own will remind you daily that your assumptions about me were wrong. Mom nodded, wiping her eyes. We'll sign. And Emily, thank you for saving our home, even when we didn't deserve it. David slid the proper lease across the table. Dad picked up his Mont Blanc pen, the one he'd intended to use for his own exploitative lease, and signed. Mom added her signature below his. I'll need first month's rent in 2 weeks, David said professionally. You can wire it to the account listed on page 3, or deliver a check to my office. We'll have it, Dad promised. Amanda stood, crossing to hug me tightly. You're amazing, you know that. I learned from watching you. I murmured back. You work 18-hour shifts to save lives. I just write code that's changing thousands of businesses. She countered. Don't minimize it. David packed his portfolio. Miss Torres, shall we discuss the Milwaukee expansion in your office tomorrow? Milwaukee? Marcus's head snapped up. Miss Torres is opening a Midwest regional office. David explained. We've purchased a building downtown. She'll be splitting her time between here and there for the next 6 months. I'd actually been looking at properties in Milwaukee for both office space and personal use. The city was becoming a tech hub, and several of my clients were based there. But my family didn't need to know all the details. I'll walk you out, I told David. At the door he paused. That was harder than acquiring the Peterson building, I'd wager. I laughed, though it sounded tired. Considerably. For what it's worth, he added quietly. You handled it with remarkable grace. Many people in your position would have been far less generous. After he left, I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the late afternoon air. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Nothing had changed externally, but everything felt different. When I went back inside, my family was still in the dining room. Amanda had made tea, her solution to every crisis. Mom was crying softly, while Dad held her hand. Marcus sat slumped in his chair, staring at nothing. I have a question, Marcus said as I entered. Why buy the house at all? You could have let it go. Let us face the consequences of our financial decisions. Started fresh without us. I sat down, accepting the tea Amanda offered. Because despite everything, you're still my family. And because I remember what this house meant to us when we were kids. Before the law firm stress, before the competition, before everything got complicated. I remember Sunday dinners, where we actually talked to each other. I remember Dad teaching me to ride a bike on that driveway. I remember Mom's garden parties. Amanda and I hiding in the tree house, while you tried to find us. This house holds good memories, I continued. I didn't want a stranger owning them. But I also refuse to be taken advantage of, I added firmly. Hence the lease, hence the boundaries. We can rebuild our relationship, but it has to be on honest ground. Dad nodded slowly. The firm is recovering. Slowly, we should be able to afford the rent without issue. And if you can't, you tell me, I said. Before it becomes a crisis. That's what family does. Communicate, ask for help, not hide and attack. Deal, Mom said softly. Over the next hour we talked, really talked, perhaps for the first time in years. They asked about my business, and I explained how I'd identified a gap in the market for mid-sized retailers who needed inventory management but couldn't afford enterprise solutions. I told them about my team of 14 employees, about the office space I rented in the tech district, about the venture capital offers I'd turned down to maintain control. Marcus asked intelligent questions about my business model, his legal mind analyzing the structure. Amanda shared stories from the hospital, the ways my software had improved their supply chain management. Even Mom contributed, mentioning that her book club friend's son worked in tech and might know potential clients. It wasn't perfect. Years of dismissal and condescension couldn't be erased in one afternoon, but it was a start. As evening fell, and Amanda left for a night shift, Marcus preparing to drive home, my parents walked me to the door. Emily, Dad said, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I should have said that years ago, regardless of whether your business succeeded or failed. I'm proud of your courage, your vision, your perseverance. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Mom hugged me tightly. Can we start over? Not forget what happened, but move forward differently. I'd like that. As I drove to my actual apartment, a penthouse downtown that they'd never seen, never asked about, I reflected on the day. The look on their faces when David revealed the truth. The scramble to reassess everything they thought they knew about me. Part of me had wanted this moment for years, wanted them to see how wrong they'd been. But now that it had happened, I felt more sad than triumphant. Sad for the years we'd wasted, the relationship we'd damaged, the support we'd failed to give each other. But there was hope too. In Dad's admission of his fears, in Mom's tears of regret, in Marcus's jealousy transformed into honest acknowledgement, in Amanda's unwavering support, finally being recognized. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Property taxes due next month. Should I send the bill to your parents, or handle it as usual? I considered. The lease specified that I'd cover property taxes and major maintenance, while they covered utilities and minor repairs. It was generous, but fair. Handle it as usual. I texted back. They have enough to adjust to. Another text, this time from Amanda. Guest house really mine, not a dream. Really yours. Move in whenever you're ready. I'll send you the key code tomorrow. A pause then. You're the best sister in the universe. Also, I told everyone in the ER about your company. You're going to get emails. I smiled. That was Amanda, already finding ways to support me. The Milwaukee expansion was real. I'd be leaving in 3 weeks to oversee the office setup, hire local staff, meet with Midwest clients. I'd invited Amanda to visit, promised her a tour of the city, maybe catch a Brewers game. I hadn't invited my parents or Marcus. Not yet. That invitation would come when our relationship had healed enough that I trusted their pride in my accomplishments was genuine, not performative. As I pulled into my building's underground garage, I thought about the unsigned lease still sitting on my parents' dining room table. My father's attempt to exploit me. I should probably have David retrieve it, shred it, but part of me wanted them to keep it. A reminder of how close they'd come to destroying our relationship entirely. Tomorrow, I had a board meeting for my company. Next week, a pitch to a national retail chain that could triple our client base. The month after that, the Milwaukee office opening, a keynote speech at a tech conference, an interview with a business magazine. My life was full, successful, exciting, and now maybe, my family could finally be part of it. Not as the dismissive critics they'd been, but as genuine supporters, who'd learned a hard lesson about assumptions, respect, and the danger of underestimating the quiet ones who keep their victories private. The lease was signed, the boundaries were set, the truth was revealed. Now came the harder work, rebuilding trust, one honest conversation at a time. But as I rode the elevator to my penthouse, looking out over the city lights, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. When thinking about my family, hope. The Chateau Margaux, 2015 splashed into my glass with the kind of sound that only a $400 bottle makes. Rich, full-bodied, unapologetic. I'd opened it specifically for tonight, though my reasons had nothing to do with celebration. Obviously, Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda should get the master suite, Ashley continued, gesturing broadly with her fork. A piece of seared scallop nearly flew off. It has the best view, and they're the eldest. Mom and Dad can take the second bedroom, and Kyle and I will take the third. My brother Kyle nodded enthusiastically, his wife Jennifer already making notes on her phone. What about the den? Could we convert that into a bedroom for the kids when they visit? Brilliant idea, my mother chimed in, reaching for the bread basket. And the library could be an office space for your father. He needs somewhere quiet to work on his consulting business. I refilled my glass. The wine caught the light from the chandelier overhead, a Czech crystal piece I'd found at an estate sale, $14,000 that my family had called excessive when they'd seen it last month. Now they were planning which relatives would benefit from its light. Sophia, are you even listening? Ashley's voice sharpened. My older sister had perfected that tone in childhood, the one that suggested my attention was a gift she deserved. I'm listening, I said quietly, cutting into my beef Wellington. The pastry was perfect, golden and flaky. I'd had it catered from Marcus, the private chef who usually only worked for Fortune 500 executives. Another expense my family had criticized as wasteful. Then you understand that this penthouse needs to serve the whole family. Ashley pressed. You can't keep it all to yourself when Uncle Ray is still renting that cramped apartment in Queens. Across the table, Uncle Ray looked uncomfortable but said nothing. He'd been unusually quiet since arriving, as had Aunt Linda. They'd exchanged a glance when Ashley started her speech, something I'd caught but couldn't quite read. It's selfish, really, my father added, his attorney voice emerging. Even in retirement, Edward Williams spoke like he was addressing a jury. Your grandparents would have wanted this property to benefit everyone, not just you. I took another sip of wine, letting the statement hang unanswered. My grandparents had been dead for 15 years. They'd never seen this penthouse, never known it existed. I think what everyone is trying to say, my mother interjected with false gentleness, is that family takes care of family. You have all this space and we have needs. It's only natural to share. Jennifer looked up from her phone. I've been researching it, actually. In New York, there are laws about shared family properties. If everyone contributes to maintenance and upkeep, you can establish collective ownership over time. My lawyer brother-in-law was notably absent tonight. Kyle had mentioned Brad was working late, but I suspected the real reason was that Brad knew better than to be present for whatever this dinner was actually about. That's not exactly how property law works. Uncle Ray began, but Ashley cut him off. The point is, Sophia, that this is family property, not just yours. She stood, wine glass in hand, addressing the table like she was giving a toast. We've all supported you over the years. Mom and Dad paid for your college. Kyle helped you move apartments 3 times. I gave you career advice when you were struggling. The word struggling landed with particular emphasis. Ashley had been dining out on that narrative for 5 years now. Poor little Sophia, unable to hold down a real job, bouncing from one creative project to another. So tonight we're here to formalize the arrangement, Ashley continued. We've discussed it, and we think a fair division would be, this bedroom has an ensuite bathroom, right? Jennifer interrupted, scrolling on her phone. Because if we're bringing the kids for weekends, we'll need easy bathroom access. All 4 bedrooms have en-suites, my mother confirmed, as if she'd lived here for years instead of visiting twice. Plus the powder room by the entrance and the full bath off the gym. They'd done research. They'd planned this. Looking around the table, I could see it clearly now. The coordinated timing of their arrival, the way they'd all dressed slightly formal, the briefcase my father had brought and set beside his chair. I assume you've prepared documents, I said, speaking for the first time since the appetizers. My father's expression shifted to something like relief. As a matter of fact, yes. Nothing too formal, just a family agreement outlining the shared usage schedule, maintenance responsibilities, that sort of thing. He reached for his briefcase, but I held up my hand. Before you do that, I'm curious. How exactly do you plan to contribute to the maintenance costs? Silence fell over the table. Well, we'd establish a fund, Kyle said carefully. Everyone contributes what they can afford. And what can you afford? I asked. Be specific. Sophia, this isn't about money, Ashley snapped. This is about family. Everything is about money when you're discussing property ownership, I replied. So let's talk numbers. Kyle, you and Jennifer are both accountants. What's your monthly contribution proposal? Kyle shifted in his seat. We were thinking maybe $500 each. That's $1,000 total from us. The monthly maintenance fee for this building is $8,400. I said. Property taxes are $15,000 monthly. Insurance is another $2,800. We're at $26,200 in basic monthly expenses, before utilities, which run about $1,200. I watched Jennifer's face as she did the mental math. $27,400 per month, $328,800 per year, just to keep the lights on. That's ridiculous, Ashley said. No one pays that much for an apartment. You're not in an apartment, I replied. You're in a 6,000 square foot penthouse on the 47th floor of one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings. The maintenance fee alone covers a 24-hour concierge, security staff, valet parking, a private gym, a rooftop terrace, and a wine cellar. Exactly, my mother said, missing the point entirely. All these amenities we could be enjoying together, at $27,400 per month. I repeated. So Kyle's $1,000 would cover about 3.6% of the monthly costs. What about you, Ashley? What's your contribution? My sister's face had gone red. I'm between jobs right now. You know that, but I could contribute $300, maybe $400. 1.4% of costs. I calculated. Mom, Dad, you're on a fixed retirement income. What were you planning to offer? We were thinking more in terms of in-kind contributions. My father said stiffly. Your mother could handle the decorating. I could manage the legal paperwork. The building already has a management company for paperwork. I interrupted. And I hired an interior designer, Deborah Chen, if you're familiar with her work. She did the Vanderbilt renovation last year. My mother's eyes widened. Deborah Chen's fees started at $150,000 for basic consultations. The point I'm making, I continued, is that collective ownership requires collective financial responsibility. If we're all going to own this property, we all need to cover these costs equally. That's not fair, Jennifer protested. You make more money than the rest of us combined. Do I? I asked mildly. What do I do for a living, Jennifer? She hesitated. Some kind of consulting, tech stuff, Kyle? I turned to my brother. What's my occupation? You do freelance work, he said uncertainly. Websites or apps or something. Ashley. My sister waved her hand dismissively. You've had a bunch of different jobs. That startup that failed. The app thing. Some consulting gigs. Nothing stable. Mom, Dad. They exchanged glances. Sweetheart, you know we've never fully understood the technology sector. My mother said. You've explained it, but it's all so complicated. I set down my wine glass. I'm the founder and CEO of Streamwise Analytics. We provide data intelligence solutions for mid-market companies trying to compete with enterprise-level competitors. We have 127 employees across 4 offices, New York, San Francisco, Austin, and London. Last year, we processed $340 million in client transactions. The silence was absolute. Our last funding round valued the company at $890 million. I continued. Forbes projected we'll hit unicorn status. That's $1 billion valuation. By end of next quarter. Kyle's mouth had fallen open. Jennifer had stopped typing on her phone. My father had gone very still. His lawyer brain clearly processing implications. That's impossible, Ashley said flatly. You were broke 2 years ago. You borrowed $200 from me for rent. I never borrowed money from you. I corrected. 2 years ago. You insisted on lending me $200 because you assumed I couldn't afford my rent. I deposited in an account and never touched it. I can return it tonight, if you'd like, with interest. But you never said my mother started. I tried to. I interrupted. 3 years ago, I invited you all to our Series B funding celebration. Dad said he had a golf game. Ashley said company parties were boring. Kyle said he was busy with tax season. 2 years ago, I was featured in Fortune's 40 Under 40 list. I sent you the issue. No one mentioned it. Last year, when TechCrunch ran a cover story on Streamwise, I emailed you the article. Mom replied asking if I'd remembered to send Aunt Linda a birthday card. I took another sip of wine. 6 months ago, I bought this penthouse. The purchase price was $23.5 million. I paid cash. The number seemed to physically impact them. My mother made a small sound. My father's briefcase slipped from his lap, hitting the floor with a thud. 23. Kyle couldn't finish. The building requires a 50% down payment minimum, and proof of liquid assets covering 5 years of maintenance fees. I continued. I had to provide bank statements showing $35 million in immediately accessible funds, just to be approved by the co-op board. You're lying, Ashley said, but her voice wavered. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen toward her. Even with the slightly dim lighting, the number was clear. $127,438,392.67. That's one account, I said. I have 4 others, plus investment portfolios, company stock, and real estate holdings. Jennifer was staring at her phone, frantically typing. Oh my God, Kyle, she's not lying. Streamwise Analytics, CEO Sophia Williams, the Forbes article, the TechCrunch piece. It's all here. She turned her screen around. There I was in a professional headshot, standing in front of our London office, the caption reading, Williams's innovative approach to data democratization has disrupted the analytics industry. Why didn't you tell us? My mother whispered. I did tell you, I replied. You didn't listen. You were too invested in the narrative of Sophia the struggling artist, Sophia the flaky tech dabbler, Sophia who needed guidance and correction. It was easier to believe I was failing than to accept I might be succeeding beyond your comprehension. Uncle Ray cleared his throat. Sophia, I think I should. You tried to warn them, I said, looking at him directly. Didn't you? He nodded slowly. I work in the financial district. I have colleagues at venture capital firms. About a year ago, one mentioned your name, said you were someone to watch. I told your parents you might be doing better than they thought. They told me I was being gullible. Uncle Ray continued, that you'd probably exaggerated your role, that young people always oversold their startups. My father found his voice. Sophia, sweetheart, if we'd known, you would have treated me differently. I finished. That's exactly why I didn't push harder to make you understand. I wanted to see if you'd respect me, regardless of my bank account. You failed that test, I added quietly. Spectacularly. Ashley stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. This is insane. You let us come here and plan everything. Let us talk about dividing up rooms, just so you could humiliate us. I invited you to dinner, I corrected. You brought the room division plans on your own. How did you even get in, by the way? I asked. This building has strict security protocols. The concierge let us up, Kyle said. We said we were your family here for dinner, and you arrived at 6:30 for a 7 o'clock dinner invitation, I noted. 45 minutes before the rest of my guests. Rest of your guests? My mother repeated. As if on cue, the private elevator chimed. The doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer, a feature that had cost an additional $2 million during construction, creating a dedicated elevator shaft for just this unit. Security Chief Morrison stepped out first. Thomas Morrison had been with the building for 12 years, a former Secret Service agent who ran security with military precision. He was followed by 4 members of his team, all in the building's distinctive charcoal suits. Miss Williams, Morrison said, his voice professionally neutral. I apologize for the interruption. I received an alert that there were unauthorized individuals in the penthouse. Should I remove these guests? The word unauthorized landed like a bomb. Ashley's face went white. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Actually, Morrison, there's been a misunderstanding, I said calmly. These are family members. They arrived early for dinner. I see. Morrison's expression didn't change, but I saw the slight tension leave his shoulders. I wasn't aware you'd updated the permanent guest list to include them. I haven't, I confirmed. They're temporary guests for this evening only. Understood. Should I remain for the duration of their visit? It was a subtle offer, and we both knew it. Morrison was offering to stay as a deterrent, a reminder of who held authority here. That won't be necessary, I said. But thank you for your diligence. Of course, I'll return to my post. Please don't hesitate to call if you need anything. He nodded to my family members individually, a gesture of professional courtesy that somehow felt like a warning, then departed with his team. The elevator doors closed. Silence filled the penthouse. Permanent guest list. My father said faintly. All residents submit a list of approved guests who can access the building without advance clearance. I explained. Family members, close friends, business associates. The system flags anyone not on the list. You never added us to the list, Ashley said. No. I agreed. I didn't. The elevator chimed again. This time, when the doors opened, my actual guests emerged. Daniel Rothstein, my CFO, arrived with his wife Maria. Sarah Kim, our head of product development, was accompanied by her husband. Marcus Okonkwo, our chief technology officer, came alone but carried a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Ashley's monthly rent. Sophia, Sarah called out, moving forward to embrace me. Sorry we're running late. Traffic from Brooklyn was a nightmare. You're right on time, I assured her, then turned to my family. Everyone, these are my colleagues. Daniel, Sarah, Marcus. This is my family. My sister Ashley, my brother Kyle and his wife Jennifer, my parents Edward and Margaret, and my aunt and uncle, Linda and Ray. Polite greetings were exchanged, but the atmosphere was strained. My family members looked shell-shocked, unable to process the shift from planning room divisions to meeting executives from a company they hadn't known existed. Should we move to the dining room? I suggested. The caterer sent word that the main course is ready. My actual dining room, not the breakfast nook where I'd seated my family, was through a set of French doors. The table could seat 16, and tonight I'd had it set for 12. Fresh flowers from the building's rooftop garden created a centerpiece that had taken a florist 3 hours to arrange. Holy hell, Marcus breathed, taking in the view. The floor-to-ceiling windows showed Manhattan glittering beneath us, the city lights creating a canvas that no painting could match. Sophia, you undersold this place. I like privacy, I said simply. The caterer's staff emerged from the kitchen, bringing out plates with perfect timing. Real Dover sole with champagne butter sauce, accompanied by sautéed vegetables that probably cost $40 per serving. My family remained in the breakfast nook, frozen. They'd been served beef Wellington earlier, an excellent dish, but not the same meal my business guests were receiving. The message was clear without being cruel. Jasiah, my mother said quietly, could we speak with you privately? I excused myself from my guests and returned to the nook. My family sat in their original seats, but everything had changed. The confidence, the entitlement, the casual assumption of ownership, all of it had evaporated. We made a terrible mistake, my father said. He looked older suddenly, the expensive dinner aging into something sad. We came here with assumptions, with plans, without ever asking what you wanted or needed. We saw the penthouse, and saw opportunity, Kyle added. We didn't see you. Ashley said nothing, but tears tracked down her carefully made-up face. I don't want to cut you out of my life, I said carefully, but I need you to understand something. This penthouse, my company, my success, none of it came from family support. It came from my work, my risk-taking, my sleepless nights, and failed prototypes, and investor pitches that went nowhere. You all had the chance to be part of that journey, I continued. Every invitation I extended, every article I shared, every attempt to include you in my success, you turned them down because they didn't fit your narrative of who I was supposed to be. So no, I said firmly. You don't get to claim this as family property. You don't get to divide up the rooms. You don't get to retroactively support me now that the hard work is finished, and the rewards are visible. But I'm not vindictive," I added. "You're welcome at family holidays. You can visit on reasonable notice. You can be proud of me now, if you're willing to be honest about why you weren't proud before." My mother nodded, wiping her eyes. "We understand. And Sophia, I am proud of you, not because of the money, or the penthouse, but because you built something extraordinary. And you did it despite our lack of support. That takes strength. I'm not sure I would have had," she added. Uncle Ray stood. "Linda and I should go. But Sophia, for what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't let them steamroll you tonight. You deserved better than what they were planning." Aunt Linda hugged me on their way out. "That penthouse in Queens, we're supposedly stuck in. We love it. It's rent controlled, and 2 blocks from our favorite restaurant. We never wanted to move here." After they left, I looked at the remaining family members. "You're welcome to stay for dessert, but my business guests and I have company matters to discuss afterward. If you'd prefer to leave now, I understand." "We'll go," Ashley said quietly. She stood, smoothing her dress. "Sophia, I'm sorry for all of it. The $200 loan, the dismissive comments, the assumptions. I was jealous and small, and I took it out on you. It wasn't a full apology, wasn't enough to repair years of dismissal, but it was a start." Kyle and Jennifer gathered their things. My parents moved slower, my father pausing at the door. "The documents I brought," he said, gesturing to his briefcase. "They're ridiculous now, obviously. I'll destroy them." "Keep them," I said. "Frame them if you want. Let them remind you that assumptions can be expensive." After they left, I returned to my actual guests. The dinner continued, flowing into business discussions about our upcoming London expansion, debates about new product features, Sarah's hilarious story about a client meeting gone wrong. This was my real family now. The people who'd taken chances on my vision, who'd worked 18-hour days to meet deadlines, who celebrated our victories and mourned our setbacks together. Around 11 p.m., after everyone had left, and the catering staff had cleaned up, I stood at the windows overlooking the city. Morrison called up from the security desk. "Miss Williams, your family members have all exited the building. Is there anything you need for the evening?" "No thank you, Morrison. Have a good night." "Before you go," he added, "I wanted to mention, your sister asked me how much penthouse units in this building typically sell for. I thought you should know." Ashley was already calculating, already seeing dollar signs. "Some people never learned." "Thank you for telling me," I said. "Of course, it's my job to know who's interested in the building's properties." For security purposes, after we hung up, I poured myself a final glass of the Chateau Margaux. Only a few sips remained, in the $400 bottle. I'd opened it as a test, wondering if my family would notice, would appreciate, would question how I could afford it. They'd drunk it like it was grocery store wine, never asking, never wondering. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Thank you for dinner. I know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday we can earn back your trust." Text from Kyle. I looked up Streamwise Analytics. 127 employees, $890 million valuation. "And I thought you were wasting your life. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry." Ashley's text was shorter. "I understand if you never want to see me again. I wouldn't want to see me either." I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. They needed to sit with their assumptions, their greed, their willingness to divide up a space that had never belonged to them. Tomorrow, I'd draft an email, something professional, boundaried clear, about expectations going forward. I'd add them to the building's approved guest list, with restricted access, advance notice required, no spontaneous visits. But tonight, I stood in my penthouse, my $23.5 million penthouse, that I'd earned through innovation and persistence, and felt something close to peace. The city sparkled below me, full of people chasing dreams, building empires, proving doubters wrong. I joined their ranks without my family's support, without their belief, without their approval, and somehow, that made the success taste even sweeter. My phone buzzed again. This time, Daniel seriously considering making you pay me more after seeing that penthouse. Also thanks for dinner. Maria won't stop talking about the view. I smiled, typing back, your equity package is already making you rich. Patience. Fair point. See you Monday. Don't work all weekend. As if I ever stopped working. But that was the thing about building something from nothing. The work never really ended. It just evolved, expanded, became more complex and more rewarding. I finished the last of the wine, rinsed the glass, and walked through the penthouse, turning off lights. 4 bedrooms, each with an ensuite bathroom, a library, a gym, a media room, an office, a chef's kitchen that would make Gordon Ramsay weep. All of it mine, bought with money I'd earned, maintained with resources I'd generated, populated with people I'd chosen. My family could have been part of this journey. They'd chosen differently. Now they'd have to live with that choice, and I'd have to decide whether to give them another chance. But that decision could wait until tomorrow.